ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौ भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, we welcome everyone for today's reading. Reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 4, verse number 28. So, the subject matter which is under discussion right now is about sacrifices. Importance of sacrifice has already been discussed. Now, the subject matter is why sacrifice or what kind of sacrifice should be performed. And the purpose of performing sacrifice is to acquire transcendental knowledge. Text number 28. Dravya yajna sapo yajna yoga yajna tata pare swadhyaya jnana yajnascha yatyaha samashita vrataha. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, others by performing severe austerities, by practicing the yoga of eightfold mysticism, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. These sacrifices may be fitted into various divisions. There are persons who are sacrificing their possession in the form of various kinds of charities. In India, the rich mercantile community or princely orders open various kinds of charitable institutions like Dharamshala, Annashet, Atitishala, Anathalaya, Vidyapit, etc. etc. In other countries too, there are many hospitals, old age homes, and similar charitable foundations meant for discharging food, education, and medical treatment free to the poor. All these charitable activities are called Dravyamana Yajna. Dravya means object. Dravyamana. There are others who, for higher elevation in life, offer promotion to higher planets within the universe, voluntarily accept many kinds of austerity, such as Chandrayana and Chaturmasya, refers to vows or austerities. These processes entail severe vows for conducting life under certain rigid rules. For example, under the Chaturmasya vow, the candidate does not shave for 4 months during the year July to October. He does not eat certain food, does not eat twice in a day, or does not leave home. Such sacrifice of the comforts of life is called as Tapomaya Yajna. There are still others who engage themselves in different kind of mystic yogas like Patanjali or Hatha Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and some travel to all the sanctified places of pilgrimage. All these practices are called as Yoga Yajna. Sacrifice for a certain type of perfection in the material world. There are others who engage themselves in the studies of different Vedic literatures, especially Upanishads, Vedanta Sutras. All these are called as Swadhyaya Yajna. All these yogis are faithfully engaged in different types of sacrifice and are seeking a higher status of life. Krishna consciousness, however, is different from all these because it is a direct service of the Supreme Lord. Krishna consciousness cannot be attained by any one of the above mentioned types of sacrifice, but can be attained only by the mercy of the Lord and His bona fide devotees. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is transcendental. Hare Krishna. Text number 29. Discussion on Hatha Yoga. Apane juhati pranam prane apanam tata pare pranapana gatirudva pranayama parayanaha apare niyata aharaha pranan praneshu juhati. Still others who incline to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming and the incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Others curtailing the eating process offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. Puppet. I would need some more light. Maybe have the light on. This system of yoga for controlling the breathing process is called as pranayama. And at the beginning, it is practiced in the Hatha Yoga system through different sitting postures. All of these processes are recommended for controlling the senses and for advancement in spiritual realization. This practice involves controlling the airs within the body so as to reverse the directions of their passage. The apana air goes downward and the prana air goes up. The pranayama yogi practices breathing the opposite way until the currents are neutralized into puraka, equilibrium. Offering the exhaled breath into the inhaled breath is called rechak. And when both air currents are completely stopped, one is said to be in kumbhaka yoga. By practice of kumbhaka yoga, one can increase the duration of life of perfection in spiritual realization. The intelligent yogi is interested in attaining perfection in one's life without waiting for the next. For by practicing kumbhaka yoga, the yogis increase the duration of life by many, many years. A Krishna conscious person, however, being always situated in the transcendent and loving service of the Lord, automatically becomes the controller of the senses. His senses, being always engaged in the service of Krishna, have no chance of becoming otherwise engaged. So, at the end of life, he is naturally transferred to the transcendental plane of Lord Krishna. Consequently, he makes no attempt to increase his longevity. He is at once raised to the platform of liberation, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 14.26. Mamachaya avvibicharena bhakti yogena sevate suguna samiti yeta brahmabhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in a light devotional service to the Lord transcends the modes of material nature and is immediately elevated to the spiritual platform. A Krishna conscious person begins from the transcendental stage and is constant in that consciousness. Therefore, there is no falling down, and ultimately enters into the abode of the Lord without delay. The practice of reduced eating is automatically done when one eats only Krishna prasadam, or food which is offered first to the Lord. Reducing the eating process is very helpful in the matter of sense control. Please highlight. And without sense control, there is no possibility of getting out of the material entanglement. So, sense control is a basic, fundamental, one of the fundamental steps for the practice of yoga. And how does sense and mind control happens? The foremost of that is to restrict our eating habits. And how do you restrict your eating habits? Only by eating Krishna prasadam. And if you eat Krishna prasadam, which means there is no non-veg, there is no onion garlic, etc., etc., and there is no unoffered food which also affects the consciousness. Like that, the devotees of the Vaishnavas, that's how they control the eating. For them, it's but natural. However, for yogis, they have to really, really practice sense control by artificially giving up, eating habits like that. So this is about Hatha Yoga practitioners, how they control through the process of breathing and purify themselves. Now, text number 30. Sarve apiyeti yagna vidu yagna shapita kalmashaha yagna shishtamrato bhujo yanti brahma sanatanam. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of results of sacrifices, they advance towards the supreme eternal atmosphere. So all these yagyas which are being prescribed here are something which purifies one's existence. So, very, very beautiful purport. What should be the aim of sacrifice? Prabhupada talks about. From the foregoing explanation, different types of sacrifices, namely sacrifice of one's possessions, Dravya Yoga, Yajna, study of the Vedas, Swadhyaya Yajna, of philosophical doctrines and performance of the yoga system, it is found that the common aim of all is to control the senses. Sense gratification. Why try to control the senses? Prabhupada says now. Sense gratification is the root cause of material existence. Therefore, unless and until one is situated on a platform apart from sense gratification, there is no chance of being elevated to the eternal platform of full knowledge, full bliss, and full life. This platform is in the eternal atmosphere of Brahman atmosphere. All the above mentioned sacrifices help one to become cleansed of the sinful reactions of material existence. By this advancement in life, not only does one become happy and opulent in this life, but also at the end he enters into the eternal kingdom of God, either merging into the impersonal Brahman or associating with the Supreme Personality Godhead, Krishna. And now text number 31. So text number 30 talked about what should be the aim of sacrifice, to control the senses. And without control of senses, there is no way of getting situated in the transcendental platform. There is Prabhupada talks of two platforms. One is situated on the sense gratification, which is what the today's world and society is. Another is on transcendental platform. Text number 31. No sacrifice, no happiness. Nayam lokasti avyajnasya kuto anya kuro satama. Obeyes to the Kuru dynasty. Without sacrifice, one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next one? This is something you want to highlight for yourself. Without sacrifice, it is not possible. Krishna says. Purport. Whatever form of material existence one is in, one is invariably ignorant of his real situation. In other words, existence in the material world is due to the multiple reactions to our sinful lives. Ignorance is the cause of sinful life, and sinful life is the cause of one's dragging on in material existence. The human form of life is the only loophole by which one may get out of this entanglement. The Vedas therefore give us a chance for escape by pointing out the paths of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. The path of religion or the different kinds of sacrifice recommended above automatically solve our economic problems. By performance of yajna, we can have enough food, enough milk, etc., even if there is so-called increase of population. When the body is fully supplied, naturally the next stage is to satisfy the senses. The Vedas prescribe therefore sacred marriage for regulated sense gratification. Thereby one is gradually elevated to the platform of release from material bondage, and the highest perfection of liberated life is to associate with the Supreme Lord. Perfection is achieved by performance of yajna as described above. Now, if a person is not inclined to perform yajna according to the Vedas, how can he expect a happy life even in this body? And what to speak of another body on another platform, on another planet? There are different grades of material comforts in different heavenly planets, and in all cases there is immense happiness for persons engaged in different kinds of yajnas. But the highest kind of happiness that a man can achieve is to be promoted to the spiritual planets by practice of Krishna consciousness. A life of Krishna consciousness is therefore, very beautiful point, the solution to all the problems of material existence. Prabhu just gives a summary now, whatever we have discussed so far. Just take to Krishna conscious lifestyle as given by Acharyas for us, as given by Srila Prabhupada. It solves all the problems of material existence. We don't have to really spend our time understanding each and everything. If we have the time, we can. But if not, if somebody just take to the life Krishna conscious lifestyle, he would be freed from all the problems of material existence, and at the end of life, he'll be able to escape from the material engagement. Text number 32. Why there are different sacrifices? Evam bahu vidayagya vidata brahmano mukhe karma jan vidita sarvan evam gyatva vimokshase. All these different types of sacrifice are proved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will also become liberated. But different types of sacrifice are mentioned in the Vedas to suit different types of worker. Because men are so deeply absorbed in bodily concept, this sacrifice are so arranged that one can work either with the body, with the mind, or with the intelligence. But all of them are recommended for ultimately bringing about liberation from the body. This is confirmed by the Lord herewith from his own mouth. Once again, reading the translation. All these different types of sacrifices are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. That's what Prabhu is saying. The performance. So different types of yajnas are there because there are different types of workers, different types of mentalities, which means some people are too much absorbed in bodily consciousness. So there are yajnas prescribed for them, such as dravya yajna, give up your possessions, like that. Eating, regulated eating, regulated sense gratification, again, it's a way to rise our bodily consciousness. And the ultimate goal is moksha. Text number 33. The purpose of sacrifice ultimately is to achieve transcendental knowledge. This is what Krishna says in this verse. Shreyan dravyamaniya yajna jnana yajna parantapa sarvam karma kilampata jnane parisamapyate. Who chastise our enemies, sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. After all, Sarapata, all sacrifices work culminate in transcendental knowledge. But the purpose of all sacrifice is to arrive at the status of complete knowledge, then to gain release from material miseries, and ultimately to engage in loving transcendental service to the Supreme Lord Krishna. Nonetheless, there is a mystery about all these different activities of sacrifice, and one should know this mystery. Sacrifices sometimes take different form according to the particular faith of the performer. When one's faith reaches a stage of transcendental knowledge, the performer's sacrifices should be considered more advanced than those who simply sacrifice material possessions without such knowledge. Prabhupada is talking about, dharmshala, anamrit, etc., where food for life has been open. Somebody has a charitable disposition, but he doesn't understand what it's going to do to him. That is the point, Without having an understanding, yet he does that. Who simply sacrifice material possessions without such knowledge, for without attainment of knowledge, sacrifices remain on the material platform and bestow no spiritual benefit. Real knowledge culminates in Krishna consciousness, the highest stage of transcendental knowledge. Without the elevation of knowledge, sacrifices are simply material activities. When, however, they are elevated to the level of transcendental knowledge, all such activities enter into the spiritual platform. Depending on differences in consciousness, sacrificial activities are sometimes called karma kanda and jnana kanda. It is better when the end is knowledge, like that. Now, after having all this discussion on different sacrifices, the importance of sacrifice, which has already been established in the 3rd chapter, was from between verse number 11 to verse number 14 and 15. So now question comes, Arjuna may ponder, my dear Lord, you have explained about so many yajnas, so many sacrifices. May I know what is that one yajna which I can perform at all time, at all place, in all circumstances? Or in other words, what is the highest sacrifice? What is the greatest sacrifice? Let me ask all of you, what could be the greatest sacrifice according to you? Surrender your whole bank balance? All savings account? Yes or no? No. Acha? Itna log asakti hota hai. Still you say no. This is one of the greatest sacrifice. Who can really do that? Okay, let's ask our audience. What could possibly be the greatest sacrifice? Time. Wonderful. Rohit Prabhu says time. Time is my money, money is honey. So if you give your time, then you don't have time to make money. So with time, you give your money also, everything. Okay, what else? Online audience. Accepting your situation as decided by Krishna. That's okay. We're talking about sacrifice. Think on more in terms of sacrifice. What can we really, where we are voluntarily giving it. Accepting the situation is okay. Voluntarily giving it. Any quick thought? What can you give to Krishna? What can you, in other words, to really achieve that transcendental position that is the goal of a sacrifice, what we would have to give or what Krishna would demand from us? Service to the society and seva. So many people are doing that. Even Bill Gates is doing that. And then is found having extramarital affair. What transcendental knowledge he got? Think about it. Isn't it? So that's not. Loving devotional service is a sacrifice. Giving up one's false ego. Oh, Ravi Bodka Prabhu, you got it. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya updekshanti te jnanam jnanina tattvadarshana. Chapter number 4, verse number 34, that's the next verse. So what is the greatest sacrifice? Is to give up one's false ego. And what do you mean by giving false ego? Is to accept an authority and live life according to the injunctions of that authority. That's what Arjuna did in 2nd chapter, verse number 7. Shishyasya sadhiman tvam prapannam. Because he did that sacrifice, that's how Bhagavad Gita manifested. And that's how he got transcendental knowledge, and through him we got transcendental knowledge. So how does transcendental knowledge comes? By taking a shelter of a bona fide guru. But how do we take a shelter? With humility. And what do we do after taking shelter? What does it mean I have taken shelter? When we render service unto him. What kind of questions can we ask? Spiritual inquiries. Not that मेरी लड़की की शादी कब होगी, मुझे American visa कब मिलेगा, etc., etc. Not like that. Spiritual inquiry. How can I make progress? How can I get free from all this misery or miserable state, etc., etc. That is what 34 talks about. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. So pranipatena matlab surrender. Prashnena matlab पूछो, inquiry. Sevaya matlab सेवा करो. उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानम ज्ञानिनाः तत्वदर्शिनः. तो किसको सरेंडर करो? तत्वदर्शिना, जिसने सच्चाई को देखा है. As such a person, when you surrender to him, make a humble inquiry with a service attitude. Being pleased by you or being merciful at you Upadeshanti te jnanam. He can give you, or he can reveal the secrets, or he can reveal the knowledge to you. Translation. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. Purport. The path of self-realization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord therefore advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession from the Lord himself. Now, I do acknowledge and understand some points would not be really affecting us. For example, the very first line, the path of self-realization, spiritualization is undoubtedly difficult. Now, what's the context of this statement here, as far as I understand while reading it, in the context of the discussion here? All of us have got connected to a bona fide parampara, Brahma Madhav Gaudiya parampara, and in a very short span of time, you learn what is the ultimate goal of Vedic knowledge. What the highest message of Bhagavad Gita? That is to serve Krishna. Manmana madbhakto madhyajimam namaskaru. But when Prabhupada writes the path of spiritualization, undoubtedly difficult. Imagine if you would have been part of the culture where from your childhood you would have studied scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, Mahabharata. I mean, that's what was happening at least 100 years ago when Gurukul system was there. Now, if you would have studied Bhagavad Gita, but not the Vaishnava perspective, if it would have been a Mayavad perspective, then how difficult it would have been to accept the different perspective. That is what Prabhupada is saying. The Lord therefore advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession. No one can be bona fide guru without following the principle of disciplic succession. The Lord is the original spiritual master, and a person in the disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process, as is the fashion of foolish pretenders. The Bhagavatam says, Dharmam tu sakshat Bhagavad Pranitam. The path of religion is directly enunciated by the Lord. Therefore, mental speculation and arguments cannot help one to the right path. Nor by independent study of books of knowledge can one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. So many of us have an experience when we studied Bhagavad Gita on our own. It did not make any sense, even after reading Prabhupada purports, which are so simple. So it can only be understood by hearing, and then we can read and understand it better like that. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant, without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute a proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission followed up with service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. Please highlight this point. This is a very, very fundamental principle of our Vedic wisdom. If you have to acquire a knowledge, if you want your education to be successful, there has to be submission, there has to be a service. Otherwise, that education will not be effective. In the sense, traditionally, we have never had a culture of fees. The education was given free of cost. However, it was accompanied with Guru Dakshina, which means a student has to give Guru Dakshina. So unless that system happens, the education does not become effective, or education is not effective. The spiritual subject matter are subject matter which are revealed with time. We externally hold the message or instruction. We externally understand the concepts because of logical presentation, but it does not come into our practice unless we have followed this culture which is there. It's very, very important. Because at one point of time, the charitable disposition was stopped. People stopped giving charity. At that point of time, education became paid. Well, I would not say that exactly. When the leaders became corrupted, when they stopped patronizing the learned class like Brahmanas, protecting them, then they had to start begging for themselves. And then they had to start charging the fees even before the program would begin. And that is what our today's education system is. You cannot start any coaching class, any school admission unless you have paid a fees. Yes or no? Before even a student goes to a college or to a school, first of all, they need fees. Because so much distrust. We don't believe this person will come back. But imagine the culture before was, you take education, everything And then at the end you say Guru Dakshina, like that. Now when Guru Dakshina was there, then another thing was, the Guru can ask for anything, huh? So now surrender would be tested. You can't say, the Guru Dakshina, I have decided what I'll give. You can't ask anything. No. And the Guru was also trained that he will not ask anything which is impossible for the student to give. He's not going to ask, okay, now because I have taught the son of the king, so now I should become the king. So gurus are also not, spiritual teachers are also not greedy like that. So that was a very wonderful culture and society. So that's inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding, which means if we receive something from any devotee, we should always reciprocate with seva. We should never return anything empty-handed. That's our culture. Somebody gives you some, let's say, some sweet box in their own personal container, for example. Now you have to return it back. Then you should return it back, again fill with some prasadam. Maybe I'm not saying you fill it up entirely, but some prasadam like that. So this is a culture of give and take. And if it is cultivated properly in our consciousness, then automatically there will be peace. There will be a wonderful relationship. People will not complain. Complaint arises because person think, केवल मैं ही करता हूँ, मेरे लिए कोई कुछ करता नहीं. How many of you agree? I am only doing for everything for everyone, but nobody does anything for me. So I will stop doing anything for anyone now. Now I would demand. And that leads to friction. How many of you agree this makes sense? This is what is the state of the society. The mother-in-law complains about the daughter-in-law, the same thing. She does not cook. I raised my son, gave him this education, but now she's not providing for the family. So this expectation mismatch happens like that. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. One must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master. When he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. So you've got the knowledge, you've got the memorization, but the understanding comes by the blessing. Please mark that point. You getting it? So somebody could have memorized 700 shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, 18,000 shlokas of Srimad Bhagavatam, 1 lakh shlokas of Mahabharata, etc., etc. But the understanding when and how to apply the spiritual message or instruction only comes by the blessing of the Guru. That's the reason. And this is a system designed by Krishna, so that there could be a surrender and sense of gratitude. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. Not only should one hear submissively from the spiritual master, one must also get a clear understanding from him in submission and service and inquiries. A bona fide spiritual master is by nature very kind toward the disciple. Therefore, when the student is submissive and is always ready to render service, the reciprocation, once again, please mark the line, beautiful point. This is how our Vedic knowledge or Vedic culture was based on. When the student is submissive and is always ready to render service, the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries become perfect, which means the heart or the consciousness of the student becomes a fertile ground to sow the seed of bhakti in the form of knowledge. And how it becomes? When a student has a submissive attitude, he has a service attitude, he is willing to follow the instructions and orders and perform any menial seva, then this combination works perfectly. Text number 35. Yajnanatvan punarmoham evam ya sati pandava yena bhutani sheshani dakshasi atmani atomai. Having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge you would see the living entities are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, they are mine. So what's the benediction, or what's the blessing of receiving transcendent knowledge from a self-realized soul? Krishna says such a person will never be put into ignorance. He will never forget who Krishna is, and he will see everything as part and parcel of the Supreme. Purport, the result of transcendental knowledge. From a self-realized soul, or one who knows things as they are, is learning that all living beings are part and parcel of Krishna. Lord Shri Krishna. The sense of an existence separate from Krishna is called as Maya. Maya means which is not. 1 second. Something that we have nothing to do with Krishna. That Krishna is only a great historical personality, and that the Absolute is an impersonal Brahman. Factually, as it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, this impersonal Brahman is a personal effulgence of Krishna, Brahmajyoti. Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and he is the cause of everything. In the Brahma Samhita, it is clearly stated, and all that is what Prabhupada talks about, how Krishna is the Supreme Personality and every living entity is part and parcel of Krishna. Next paragraph. For want of sufficient knowledge in the absolute science, we are now covered with illusion, and therefore we think that we are separate from Krishna. Although we are separated parts, we are nevertheless non-different from Krishna. The bodily difference of the living entity is Maya and not of actual fact. We are all meant to satisfy Krishna by Maya alone. Arjuna thought that the temporary bodily relationship with his kinsman was more important than his eternal spiritual relationship with Krishna. The whole teaching of Gita is targeted toward this end, that a living being, as Krishna is eternal servitor, cannot be separate from Krishna, and his sense of being an identity apart from Krishna is called Maya. The living entities, as separate parts and parcels of Supreme, have a purpose to fulfill. Having forgotten that purpose since time immemorial, they are situated in different bodies as man, animals, demigods, etc. Such bodily differences arise from forgetfulness of the transcendental service of the Lord. But when one is engaged in transcendental service through Krishna consciousness, one becomes at once liberated from this illusion. One can acquire such pure knowledge only from the bona fide spiritual master and thereby avoid the delusion that the living entity is equal to Krishna. Perfect knowledge is that Supreme Soul, Krishna, is the supreme shelter of all living entities, and giving us such shelter, the living entities are deluded by the material energy, imagining themselves to have separate identity. Thus, under different standards of material identity, they become forgetful to Krishna, of Krishna. When, however, such deluded living entities become situated in Krishna consciousness, it is to be understood they are on the path of liberation. Muktir hitona anyatha rupan swarupena vyavastitihi. Liberation means to be situated in one's constitutional position as an eternal servitor of Lord Sri Krishna. Now, text number 36. Now it talks about, we talked about result of knowledge, result of acquiring transcendental knowledge in text number 35. Text number 36 is the power of transcendental knowledge. Api chedasi papebhya sarvebhya papakrit. All of you have to speak loudly. Then you'll become more alert. Otherwise, early morning, you'll become drowsy. Loud and clear. Please repeat. Api chedasi papebhya sarvebhya papakritamaha sarvam jnana plaveneva vrijinam santarishyasi. Api chedasi papebhya, which means even if you consider to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross the ocean of these signs or miseries. But proper understanding of one's constant position in relation to Krishna is so nice that it can once lift one from the struggle for existence which goes on in the ocean of these signs. This material world is sometimes regarded as an ocean of these signs and sometimes as a blazing forest. What it means, just like imagine you're drowning in the middle of the ocean and there is no island at far, far off distance. You can't see anything. There is no sign of life. Human life. There's a lot of living entities in the water. There's no sign of human life, and you're stuck, and you're just struggling to float on top of ocean, just to keep on breathing, but you're losing your strength. And at that point of time, a rescue team comes in helicopter, and they give you the hand. Please take it and come up. And you take it. Would you be saved? Although you may not know how to swim, although you may not know how to come out of the situation, but because the helping hand came, give you a helping hand, the helping hand can pull you out of the situation and take you back. And that helping hand is of Krishna. That is what Prabhupada is saying here. In the ocean, however expert as you may be, the struggle for existence is very severe. If someone comes forward and lifts a struggling swimmer from the ocean, he is the greatest savior. Perfect knowledge received from the Supreme Personality Godhead is the path of liberation. The boat of Krishna consciousness is very simple, but at the same time the most sublime. Hare Krishna. So the transcendental knowledge destroys all our sinful reactions. That is the power of transcendental knowledge. And the same discussion goes in the next verse, text number 31. We'll pause after that. Yatai dhamasi samitugne bhasmasa kurute arjuna. Loudly. Jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmasa kurute tata. And now Krishna gives an analogy to explain this concept, where Krishna says, as the blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, forest fire turns everything into ashes. O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burns to ashes all reactions of all reactions to material activities. Purport: perfect knowledge of self and super soul and of their relationship compared here into fire. The fire not only burns up all the reactions to impious activity, but also all reactions to pious activities, turning them to ashes. The many stages of reaction: reaction in the making, reaction fructifying. This is Kutam, Bijam, Papam, that is what we'll discuss here. But knowledge of the constituted position of the living entity burns everything to ashes. When one is in complete knowledge of all reactions, both a priori and posteriority are consumed. In the Vedas, Brihad Anandaka Upanishad, it is stated, Ubhaye uha vaisha eti tarati amritaha sadhu asadhuni. One overcomes both the pious and impious reactions of work. Hare Krishna. So with that, we come to the conclusion of our reading for today. We were talking, the main point of discussion was what is the greatest sacrifice? And that can bring us to the greatest boon for our life, that is Krishna consciousness. The greatest sacrifice, verse number 34, is to surrender one's false ego. And then after that discussion, what is the result of transcendental knowledge? It destroys all your sinful reaction. The result of the transcendental knowledge is such a person never becomes bewildered or fall into Maya again. And what is the power of knowledge? Text number 36, all his sinful reactions are destroyed. Text number 37 gives an analogy to explain the concept given in text number 36. Now in remaining verses, we'll discuss about who can attain to this transcendental situation, platform, or devotional service. Who can, who cannot, is what Krishna is going to speak from 38 verse onward, which we shall discuss tomorrow. With that, thank you very much for today morning joining us for Bhagavad Gita reading. We read from verse number 28, I believe. Yes, to 37. And we'll continue from 38 tomorrow. Jagadru Srila Prabhupada ki, Bhagavad Gita ki, Jai Samaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. So we conclude for today.